thank you all for coming. It's a privilege to be here. It's obviously we're at the 2013 Societies Convention, and it's a great opportunity for me to speak to different people from around the world, and it's a great place to be. What I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about my lighting and composition in portraits, specifically portraits as opposed to weddings. There are a couple pictures in here, but it's just the same rules and the same methods and systems apply to both weddings and portrait work. So the word advanced is in here simply because it gets more of you into the room this very early in the morning. It's nothing really advanced about what I do. Okay, it's thought through and it's considered, but actually most of what I'm going to talk to you about and show you is something which doesn't involve a lot of technology. It's quite simple concepts and they're quite easy to apply. So hopefully you'll get a lot from this morning's session. Okay, right, so this is the first picture. It was taken in Spain. We go to Spain every year in October time, and it's just a way of extending the UK summer, really, is to get out to Spain for a few days. And this is an old monastery, one of the places that we shoot. And what I wanted to show you about this picture is the fact that I've lit it with a speed light, single speed light, without any modification. So it's from the left of the camera there, and you can see it's quite a strong shadow and quite hard shadows. I like shadows, they're important to me. And we've got this strong pyramid structure in the middle. Now, by moving the speedlight further away, it allowed me to create this sort of shape. With a speedlight from the camera angle, it would have just been quite flat. It's taken on a 21mm Zeiss lens. Whether that matters, I don't know, but it's pin sharp and it's 2.8. So that's one of those things. Through the back here, we've got what we call the bright horizons principle, where the background environment is there. It's bright, but all the detail is there, but it's the brightest part of the scene. So if you've got the brightest part of the scene as the furthest part of your picture, you'll find that your image has a sense more depth to it. Okay, there's a sense of 3 dimensions. And when I was filming things like EastEnders and shows like that, we used to light. If we were in one bar in the pub and the door was open into the other bar, we'd light the other room 1 stop brighter than the room that we were filming in. Gives a bit of depth to the pictures. Okay. This picture here, this is the second frame I want to show you, is all about curves. It's about this line. It's about the design that I like to work with. And you can see that Katie's eyes there are on an angle. I very rarely have level eyes in my pictures. So, and if you bring someone's shoulder or body mass, the upper body weight, into a wall or a surface, it relaxes them. Rather than standing in mid-space, get them to stand back into a space, and they're much more relaxed, okay? So that's one option. But you can see that the eye comes in this arm here. It gets led up through this hand, into this hand, up into the face. There's a sort of a nice strong diagonal running through the picture that way. This next picture is still of Katie, and we're still in the ruins in Spain. I wanted to share this with you because the fact that the area here on her back is completely bleached. Okay, I'm very comfortable with white as a tone to use creatively. I don't have a problem with having highlights bleached like that because it's real. And in the days of film, we always used to shoot, and wedding dresses would be burnt out by the time you get that onto print. It's quite easy to get onto negative to get all the range of tones necessary, but to get those back onto a print was always difficult. And actually, I really like this. I also love this little gap here between the wall and Katie's face. Again, we've got eyes and a diagonal. So we've got a diagonal running through here, diagonal running through there, but it's got that bleached tone. And I like all the texture in skin. Often you'll hear me sort of talk about elements in my photographs where I've left a texture. I don't edit skin. I don't soften it because we're going to have this legacy of pictures from the first 12 years of digital where people are just smoothed out, smudged, and it just doesn't look real. And when you look back at those pictures, you'll be in 15, 20 years' time, you're thinking, oh my God, what were we thinking? Why does everybody look so plastic wrapped? That's something I'm very conscious of. And the best photographs I've ever known and ever admired and ever seen have really all been taken on film and have not had any skin softening. And I think it's important that you understand that a good picture has the depth and has an honesty. this picture here I wanted to show you because the way I like to shoot. I shoot in manual. Okay, I shoot in manual exposure, and there's a reason for that. The reason is that I'm on a Canon, and I said it because on a Nikon you've got the opportunity in the aperture priority or shutter priority or program modes to operate of plus or minus 5 stops. With a Canon, it's plus or minus 2 stops. Now, if I was in aperture priority taking this picture, I would need to be in probably -3 or -4 stops. So I can't do that with a Canon. So it forced me early on when I bought a Canon to switch over to a manual exposure. And the exposure for this picture is exactly the same as the one the moment before when I was outside looking back at Katie. Okay, the exposure's the same. The light on her hasn't changed, but the whole balance of the picture's changed. Okay, so it's one worth bearing in mind. This picture, I set this picture up. I don't know why the Spanish haven't got a word for stop, but they've borrowed our sign and our word. And this is just lying in the ground, and I picked it up and I put it over and rested it against the wall here. It's like a fulcrum. The picture balances on this sign. And then I got my model to kick her shoes off and just hitch her dress up. And then I went in and flicked a bit of hair across her face just to get a little bit edgy, create a bit of tension, a bit of edge. It looks sort of quite raunchy, and yet, you know, okay, we've got a bit of leg showing. You know, it's not raunchy, but it is. It's got some sort of chemistry to it. But it was, to my surprise, we had the delegates there, and we all shot the scene. And I was looking at their pictures, and most of them had just gone here to a vertical, so like a 10 by 8 or whatever, you know, the vertical on the left. And they hadn't shot this, and I was surprised. But for me, this is about negative balance. This is about the visual weight of the picture this side of the frame being the same as the visual weight of the picture that side of the frame. It's about that fulcrum. It's about having balance. Okay, so sometimes try and understand that you've got to have the feel, when you sort of half close your eyes and you look at the picture, people sort of squint at the photograph, get some idea of its balance and its tonal value. For me, that was important. This picture here, you'd say, well, is there much visual balance here? Well, there is, because there's quite a large area here, which a lot of people would just slice out. But I quite like Nico. I thought Nico could be her boyfriend, so I like that. And she, as a viewer here, we're privileged. We're privileged to the fact that we can see Nico and that text there, and she can't. Okay, and this is a technique we often used to use in filmmaking, where you want to give someone the sense of, so the audience has more knowledge than the person that's in the picture. It's just like on pantomime, you know, behind you sort of thing, you know. And but right the way through in filmmaking, it's the way you can see the person coming around the corner behind them, and you think, oh my God, turn around, look, you know. But that whole feel is there. Also here, what we've got, can you see her bum is off the wall here? And it's just really leaning back on her shoulders. That's the technique that I use. Is this a solid wall? Well, no, it's not quite. But if you lean back on shoulders and put the weight through the shoulders and get a nice strong diagonal through the body and let your arms fall away from the camera, it looks fantastic. Not on me, but with a bride or something like that. Okay? Now, and there's another element to the work that I do, and you'll start to see this if you read my blog on prophotonut.com. You'll start to pick up on some of the narrative in my work. So, for instance, here, this is a girl, Chloe Jasmine Witchler, and I've done a book with her, and we'll discuss that book in a little bit. But the whole concept of this picture, this was taken at an old mental home, disused place. But I wanted to have this sense of vulnerability and strength, the contrast in the same picture. So we created this character, this persona of a young girl who's grown up in an institution, who's perhaps had a troubled childhood, maybe been abused and homeless or without parents, but who's so strong from those experiences. So we've got that negative past, and we've got that strength and that character, and she's a real woman that's coming through here. That depth needs to be conveyed into the picture. We need to pull that through the eyes and get that rapport. I'm shooting through a bit of glass because it provides that barrier. We can see through into a world, but not quite so clearly. It's a little bit more confused than we can understand. And so if a picture could be the cover of a novel or something like that, then for me, it communicates, it works really well. Okay, so sometimes there's a narrative in the work that I do, and you'll start to pick that up. This is a picture from the same shoot. Both these pictures, by the way, were taken on the Fuji X100. Now, I'm not paid by Fuji to promote their products, but it's a great little camera to use. And I was a little bit hungover when I was shooting this sequence because it was after a Christmas party. And do you know what? I struggle to use an SLR when I can't think, there's all too many buttons. So with this little X100, you pick it up and shoot. I put a bit of smoke in this room here. It's naturally lit, so there's a light from this window, of course, coming through here, lighting this side of the face. And there's also a window this side, just out of shot there, coming through and picking up on this side here. Then that window there's giving us that lovely rim light, and away you go. Really, really quite a simple picture, maybe 1000 ISO, something like that. But a beautiful one nonetheless. And of course, Chloe is a fashion model, and you've got that lovely tension and edge here. You can see that we've got enclosed triangles. That I often work with enclosed triangles. I like to close arms a lot of the time, and you'll see that in my work. It's good to have some rhythm and design in what you shoot, so that you fall back on the principles that you've established as your style. Here I've got these arms come in a little bit, and just to create a little bit more on the shape. But this is the camera. I just put that in there because I'll show you what an X100 looks like. It's just a small camera, fixed lens, really, really nice camera to use. This is in Fuerteventura, and we're going to Fuerteventura in about 60 days' time. And we're going to do figure in the landscape, but it's not nudes. It's going to be all in sort of long flowing dresses on sand dunes and amazing locations. But I went out and recce'd it first, and so we did that recce at the same time last year, so we know what it's going to be like, how lovely and warm it's going to be, and fantastic. But you can see the sunlight coming through the building here. But I've lit Katie from here with an Elenchrom Ranger head. So we're going to be taking out an Elenchrom Ranger kit, which is sort of the next level up really from a speed light. It's 400 watt seconds lighting kit. And so here we've got this is the House of the Colonels in Fuerteventura, an old castle, and there's a few sort of derelict buildings, brilliant places to shoot. And I've got the sunlight from behind creating that rim light and the key light from the front, straight down the nose. But for me, it's all about this curve here, the small of the back. And it doesn't really matter what's going on the front of the body. What matters is what's going on behind in this little area here, okay? That's the key. I've sussed all this out in the last couple of years because I've just concentrated on photographing women of all shapes and sizes, and it's something, it takes time to learn these things, but it's also quite enjoyable. Anyway, this was in Fuerteventura, and we could see this. There was one cloud in the sky, and it was heading straight for the sun. So I thought, well, let's see what's going to be like in the shade. And I've got out the quadra and rigged the quadra here. So the quadra's just rigged there. And when the sun went in, and you can see we've got a clear sky, but there's no sun here. When the sun went in, we just took the picture. And so when the sun went in, everything dropped by 2 stops. And I just set the flash power. They've got a remote control on the quadra, on the camera. You can just turn it up or down. It's just like a volume control to give me the correct exposure here, and then just let the rest of it fall off. So it's quite nice sometimes just to be able to make your own light. This is exactly what we've done here. This is another part of Fuerteventura, and these are the locations that we're going to be shooting in. But this one here, the sun, you can see the shadow from the sun in the foreground. Okay, it's quite faint shadow, but it's there. It's a hard and distinct shadow from the sun, and there's the shadow from the quadra. So the quadra is probably 3 times the power of the sun in terms of that ratio there, and it's all to do with how far the light is, of course, and from your subject. But that's, it's quite nice to be able to have that bit of oomph when you need it. This isn't just naturally lit, and it's one of those things. There's a whole lot of rules that we all know about in terms of having strong bass lines, putting your subject on the thirds, etc. But for me, it's all I just see things differently sometimes. I use a lot of negative space in my pictures. You could probably cut the bottom of that bottom half of that picture off and say, well, look, I'm losing nothing. There's nothing there. In fact, it's even out of focus. But for me, I love the rhythm, and it's like a cascading waterfall, and I like that. And it drives up into this fantastic shape and the little bit of wind that just picked up in the dress there. And you can see I've got these enclosed hands, and just by putting hands onto a bum, it just creates a little bit of arch in the back there. For me, that's what I'm looking for. Very, very simple picture. And here, literally just a shot with sunlight and quadra, the two working together. I often use a boom arm, this is a little tip here, to get a light above a subject. So I put a lighting stand over here, and my boom arm out here with my light on it, pointing above the subject, and I'm shooting over there, and I can't see the stand, and I can't see the light from above. Okay, so it's quite handy. It's when lighting stands are the things to get rid of, get them out of the shot, because lighting stands are often a problem. And then there's a close-up. It was shot at that time. Nice texture. This is what it's all about. It's like a mountain range, isn't it? But this little cut in here, that's the important element. So this is later in the day. We'll finish the day each day in Fuerteventura at a sundown point. There's normally a few bars nearby as well. And this was shot at 1,000th of a second on the Fuji X100. And with a camera with the lens with the shutter in the lens, I should say, you get the opportunity to use a flash sync speed which is higher. And it's really quite nice to be able to do that. It's quite useful. This picture here, this is Natalia, this is in Spain, this is Spain this year, and what was about 3 months ago, and what I did was I pulled this bit of branch out of the sort of, there's a tree which was dropping branches and things, and I pulled it out of the hedge and I set it all up to give me that nice pyramid structure, that strong sort of lines there, and I wanted Natalia's legs to echo what's going on, to be sort of more branches on the tree, really. And I shot from above her eye line. I don't normally do that, but it's by shooting from above the eye line, it tends to make someone a little bit more vulnerable. Yeah, it softens them. But I've got quite a strong, intense look here. I've captured that. I've created that moment of intensity. And it's lit with a silver brolly into a Lovegrove Gemini bracket and 2 speed lights, a couple of speed lights into that brolly. The speed lights are on half power. If you use 2 speed lights to do the job of 1, and you use them on half power, they recycle faster, and of course you get twice the number of flashes. So it's worth doing. It's not just recycling in half the time, it's far less than that. It's about a fifth of the time. There's this big exponential curve that a speed light goes through in its charge cycle. So it's worth investigating that. It's quite a good idea. Here, this was again in Spain, and this picture was taken on a 60mm lens. Now, I've got a crop sensitive camera, so that's the equivalent of about a 90mm. And what I want to show you here is the outer focus area, how delicate it is. It goes quite creamy and quite calm. It's not shouty. Okay, this is typical of the lens. For me, when I'm looking at a lens to use for portraiture, especially a telephoto lens, I'm looking at how beautifully rendered the outer focus area is. All lenses can produce areas that are out of focus. It's just that some of them tend to be really fussy and busy and competing for the attention of the foreground, and so this background becomes part of the subject. For me, the background really, by moving it out of focus, I want it to be not the subject at all, but to be not detract from it. So just to separate here, and we've got this sunlight coming from here, and this lovely rim of the hat, beautiful picture. Let's show you the same scene lit. Okay, now here I've used a wide lens. I've used an 18mm lens. We've got depth of field from the foreground right through the background. And I've lit this as well. But the lighting on here is quite simple. I've got a light from over here, speed light from the left, kicking in here. Of course, you can see it, the shadow here under the chin there. And but I've tipped the hat back and up so I can see Olivia's eyes, and that speed light is quite low, having to get in underneath the rim of the hat there. But unless someone points it out, you don't necessarily think that it's lit. Now we've got some sunlight here. Sunlight is amazing stuff because you can predict what's going to happen to it. Of course, when you've got lots of clouds, and we haven't really seen the sun for a long time, but out in Spain they have quite a bit of sun. In fact, I think when we were there, it hadn't rained since March, and we were there in October. So quite long periods. But I could see it. There's the trees and this old building. And it moves at 15 degrees an hour, the sun. It's quite straightforward. It's quite easy to track because it goes 360 degrees in 24 hours. So it's quite easy to track it through the sky in that arc. And so what I can do is you can think, well, in about 10 minutes' time, that sun is going to be scooting down that wall. We'll come back. So I went off and did a shoot on inside the building, came back out, and there it was coming through the trees. So what have we got here? We've got a strong base to the picture, triangle pyramid structure, nice diagonal in the eyes, of course, as I always do, and looking down and to the side, it's very much the sort of Lovegrove style, and the light is dappled. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that dappled light and things. I think it was quite an interesting styling situation. Look, for me, there's one thing which leaps out as being beautiful in this picture, and that's her eyelashes. Do you see those? The sun and hard light creates those one fantastic shadows from eyelashes and just makes them look super long and gorgeous. And they are real eyelashes as well. I mean, it's amazing. They're just super long. And then here, this looks like she's just wrung that out to dry, but forgot to unroll it, that dress. But it's all right. It's so creased. It's good again, isn't it? Yeah. I'm sure it wasn't intended to look like that. It's something else which is a characteristic of some of my work is that intensity. When someone, and when I'm photographing someone, often I don't want to imagine that there's anyone else around. I want just that intensity. So I'll discussing this in my talk in a couple of days' time. But what I've got specifically here is that I'm connecting with Natalia in a very strong and very characterful way. She's acting, and I've directed this action. But when someone throws their head back, it challenges. It's like you looking at me. It's like that slightly confrontational, and I think that's really important sometimes. But the arms up, it's sort of submissive. Yeah, it's not defensive. It's submissive, and yet we've got a confrontational look. And those little, how do I call it? They're contrasts, aren't they? And we always like contrast in photography, sometimes more obvious and other times less obvious. Things like Trash the Dress, where you've got a beautiful dress and we're coming out of the sea or something. And it's like, it's the shock, the contrast that makes the picture dramatic and makes us want to think, I should like to take that picture. But I tend to look at contrast and emotion. I think that's quite important to do that. This is a picture of Natalia, and her name happened to be on the wall, which had been inscribed in 1998, but she wasn't there at that time. But I just loved that. I thought, well, if it's got your name on the wall, we've got to take a picture of you. So there's a little portrait here. And here we just got that delicate hand, again, the hand coming up into the face. I tend to try and avoid hands on faces, but you will see a few pictures in this set. But going forward, 2013, I'm going to try and avoid hands near faces, because hands are huge. And keep them out of face. I mean, you don't want to be doing this or that or what have you. But at the same time, occasionally, because his eyes are looking away, what's happening here with this picture is we're thinking, of course we've got the diagonal in the eyes again, we're thinking, what is she thinking? Yeah, it draws us in. What's she thinking about? What's her life? This is like an oil painting. It's a canvas. It's beautiful in its own right. But it allows us to take the picture to take on another meaning, really. When you photograph children and families for a living, it's so easy to get caught up in this thing of wanting to have the children looking happy at the camera. But there's a reason why you want to do that, because parents always buy those pictures. But sometimes you want to learn a little bit more about the child, you want to be drawn into that person. You want the portrait to have some depth to it. This picture here, this is just wonderful sunlight coming through this cottage. It's another narrative picture. This is, but I won't tell you the story because it's quite a long one. But we built this story up, and I used a reflector with a panel, a bit of sunlight, just to knock some light back into here, because we've got very high contrast scene here, and I needed more contrast on my subject, because it's contrast that allows us to separate the subject from the background. Or the subject. So if we're going to highlight a subject in a scene, you've got three options, haven't you? You've got focus, differential focus. You can have that subject in focus and nothing else. That says, hey, look, that's my subject. You can have contrast. You can have a high contrast subject and then a low contrast environment around that subject. Or you can have tone. You can have a highlight tone of subject against dark area, or a silhouette, the other way around. Okay, so those are the things. And I tend to use contrast a lot as my differentiator, my separator of subject to background. This I just put that in there. I thought, well, it's winter, isn't it? Let's remind ourselves of what it's like with a lovely sea. But this building, this is the sort of place that we're working in. That reflector again, pumping back in. Poor girl, she can hardly open her eyes. That's the thing about reflectors; they are killers for that. If it's a bright space anyway, and someone's reflecting the sun in your eyes, it's a bit tough. But it's such a wide shot, you can't see that she's struggling. Now, this is a little picture up. This is the differentiators we're talking about. I remember, and then a moment ago, you see how this area here is low contrast, because that's where the light hasn't gone. Where the light has gone, we've got high contrast. We've got very dark shadows and very light highlights, high contrast. Here, we've got sort of mid-dark grey shadows and mid-light grey highlights. We could increase the contrast in this zone to give us the same tonal range as this. And we wouldn't want to do that, of course, but it's one of those things. So I came in here, just get nice flicks into the hair, and that little confrontational look back over the shoulder. Very, very engaged picture. And of course, the single speed light, it's a hard light source of speed light. Okay, and I sort of do bang on about this a little bit, and I apologise, but hard light is beautiful light. It creates beautiful shapes to faces, nice striking shadows, and gives skin good life and vitality. Soft light tends to flatten stuff. It widens faces. Hard light narrows faces. Okay, so here I've used a speed light, as you can tell. From here, just into there, you can see the shadow from that there, but there's also a little bit of light coming from this side. You can see on that side of her arm here, so there's a speed light from that side and one from this side. So I'm working 90 degrees to my light sources. This is in Portishead near Bristol. Some rocks at the end of the quay. And this light here is 2 stops brighter than that light there. I can just see that by looking at the relative tones. And so there's chances are this one's on full power and the other one's on quarter power. Now, to rig speed lights that far away from your subject and still have enough intensity, what we do is we spot them up. Okay, so you take a speed light, you hit the zoom button and go into 105 if you're on Canon or 200 if you're on Nikon. And that is like a maglite torch. It means that you can get some range, you can spot it into a tight spot, and it's just lighting this area here, but from way back here. There are amazing bits of kit speed lights, really, really versatile. This was a shot I took in Italy. We were in Pisa. And it was just a creative day at the end of a shoot I'd done we'd done in a villa. And the delegates I was with, we wanted to know how to shoot in full sun. So I said, okay, let's go and do it. So we set up a few fashion shots. I could have cleaned the car a little bit, but this was just in the street. And I thought we should got white, and we got a white car, and it's full sun, but lovely, lovely shapes and patterns. She's in a low-angle viewpoint, and not the whole of her body is in the sun. Her feet are just tucked into there. But you can see in reflection of the car, this arch and this yellow wall. Well, that's the next picture, because I had both sets of delegates working together. I think there were 6 of us on that day. And this one here, I said, well, we borrowed the bike. It was locked, but we just picked it up and moved it along a bit. Because I wanted to get this wheel here, this circle and that circle to match with the arches. So I'm lying in the gutter, and I'm admiring this girl's DMs, her Dr. Martens. She didn't know what Dr. Martens is. Dr. Martens, what do you mean? But she loves the boots. But, you know, British tradition, I said. Oh, they're British. Anyway, but the yellow and the blue work really well because they're opposites, of course. And so trying to harmonise those are quite important. So I thought the yellow wall would be great with this blue jumper, and the white car was great with the white, you know. And then we brought the bike in to match that, and the spokes and the bars, everything all sort of works. Sunglasses help when you're working in full sun because it means that someone's not having to squint. But you don't necessarily need them. It's surprising quite what you can get away without. This is in Manchester. I suppose it's the Venice of the North, really, isn't it, Manchester? And we've got this fantastic bridge here. And this is nice leading in. We've got these lines that come into here. But really, this is a compositional delight. You've got a situation like this. You can move around the scene. And the important thing is to compose with your feet. This was taken on the Fuji X100, and it's a fixed 35mm lens. And the great thing about that is you have to move to get your shot. Plus, you can compose in 2 dimensions. You can look at the back of the camera and think, I'll just bring that down to, oh, that's it. Boom. You're not crawling around on your knees all the time. And a lot of photographers, they like to have a viewfinder. Well, I challenge that. I think when you get an iPhone out and you had a few drinks, or a camera phone, it could be a Samsung, I'm not necessarily an Apple fan, but you can just have that camera and you can see and take pictures in a far easier way when you're composing in 2 dimensions and distilling that 3-dimensional scene in front of you, and you're doing that just in 2 dimensions. It's much easier. And that's why I like working with those small compact cameras. But here we've got the arch at the top here. That's a nice foundation arch, shall we say, but and it gives us a nice dark band along the top. We've got a pillar on the right-hand side, all the way down through here, holding it together, a strong base to the picture, and then a pillar up the left-hand side, balancing the two. We've got red on the jacket, green in the walls here, and blue in the pillars. So we've got the red, green, and blue. That's the three primaries of light. You know, it's ticking every box, isn't it? You know, this is the sort of thing we're looking for in composition and design, is to just do that. So the red coat's got to go on, take off the leopard print coat, put the red one on and get into that boat, and don't worry about it, it's full of water, you'll be fine. And away we go. So here, I don't know quite, we're in Spain here again, but I don't quite know what these blue things are. It's probably a gasometer or something, or electricity substation. But I just use a single speed light to create that sort of feel of dappled sunlight. You know, it's just, so the speed light's up coming down from here. These shadows, look how hard they are, but look how gorgeous. There's a lovely feel to these shadows. And it's that, again, we've got a closed group here, so that hand's a little bit limp here, but I quite like the shapes that we've got, and the eyes on the angle there, and shot in from below the eye line. Of course, it's striking, isn't it? Because the colour, we love colour. It just leaps out at us, especially when we're thinking about creating pieces of art for the wall. If you want to sell something of a family or to a cafe or something like that, just make it colourful. People love colour. And this is a little picture I took of Chloe Jasmine in Bristol. There's some signage here saying "We have moved." There's some arrows, and it's for a property development company. And I thought, well, I don't need the text. I just need the arrows. And I just thought they work quite well with the geometric shapes in Chloe's coat. And of course, the red and the trousers and the lips and the sort of the plum, brilliant, beautiful harmonies there. So that works really, really well. Here, where we are, we're in Venice. I've shot from above because I sort of wanted to get these people in, and I wanted to keep that diagonal really tight. The lower you go, when you've got foreground and background, the lower the background gets. And the higher you go, the higher the background gets. So when I'm separated, if I'm taking a photograph of all of you here, if I come up higher, the background group go higher in the picture. If I come down, the background group go lower in the picture, for the same for the foreground. And so it's really quite handy to be able to use elevation to change your viewpoint, to create something. You know, she's looking this way and she's looking that way. There's something a little bit odd going on here, and there's a little ring. She's about to get engaged. I don't think she is. But hey, I'm sorry. I'm sure that one day your prince will come. But Venice is an amazing place. You've got this lovely stonework. You know, you couldn't make it. If I was Disney, I couldn't make it as good as this. This is just beautiful. And again, it's my bleached highlights. I'm not worried about the highlights going. I love that feel. And it's just sunlight. The sun was out and it was great because it meant I didn't have to rig a speed light. But I could easily quite create this with a speed light from behind. You see the shadows coming forward here. Really, really simple to do with a speed light, but the sun did it for us. So when I'm out shooting, I'm always looking for those options. And the reason we're taking the exposure right up here is to get here. This is where your eye goes, and this is the text. Look at that hair, it's fantastic. And nice diagonal in the eyes as well. And of course, the heels. It's all about the shapes, the heels and the feet and things like that. That's really important to get those right. Another little bit of sunlight, fading sunlight onto the pillars of Venice. We're going to go to Venice again this year. It's going to happen. And it's just an amazing place. So I shall be taking a group of delegates, and we're going to go and shoot Venice because it's just unbelievable, breathtaking. I was only there for a day and a half. Went there on a recce just to sort of work out, can I do a street shoot in Venice? Can I find back alleys and back canals and things which don't even have people in them? We're not going to be in anybody's way. And actually, we did. That's exactly what we went out to do. And we've mapped a route with GPS as we went, taking pictures on the phone, and it plotted everything. And we've got our route sorted, and we're walking. The route that we do is into the sun throughout the day, so it follows the sun around as we go around. It's brilliant, and we're in little pizza places on the route. So that's the sort of thing I do on a recce. But here, this is the sunlight just hitting this lovely little bridge, this beautiful, delicate arch. It's all about the curves. Fantastic. Another little bit of sunlight. You can see it's only a gnats of light. And in a second, it was sort of gone, you know, as it comes through the buildings. But it's the shadow detail that matters sometimes. It's what's going on in the shadows. This is in Bristol. I just quite like this sort of look. it's against my sort of principle of closing triangles, but I love the strong drama of it. Do you remember that Nico picture? It's very similar, isn't it? Yeah. And what we've got here is we've just got a speed light coming into here, and that area of high contrast, and we've got sunlight coming that way on that wall there. It's a very strong picture in colour. I don't know why I'm showing it in black and white, but it's simplified in black and white as well. Arms up in the air. This is, when I'm this wagon here, this railway wagon I'm in, for me, what was important about it was what's the roof. The curve of the roof told me I was in a railway wagon. I was thinking, well, what else is there in there? Plus, by being reasonably high, I can see some other wagons and things going on. And I moved over to the left a little bit so I could see the reflection in that window with those tracks. And it looked great. But the only way to have that motivation to see that arch at the top was to bring the arms up. So Jojo's arms go straight up, bears her midriff a little bit, which is quite exciting really, and the arms go up, and then that allows me to include that strong beam in the picture. So that's the motivation for the picture. It puts her face bang in the middle of the frame, which is bad in terms of compositional elements, but actually I really like that. You know, the rules are there, but I'm not trying to deliberately break the rules, but if it feels right, it is right. That's my concept really with photography. If you look at the picture and you like it, it just works, then it doesn't matter really what anyone else thinks perhaps, because sometimes we have to be quite selfish really. I take pictures for me, pictures that I like, and pictures that work for me. If other people happen to like them as well, then that's a bonus. That's fantastic. And if you enthuse enough about something to a customer, they'll buy it. If you say, oh my God, you look gorgeous in that picture. I love the light, the way it just runs around you through your hair and things. Oh, do you think so? Oh, okay, yeah, I'll have that. And actually, it might not be a great picture of them, but do you know what I'm saying? Is that sales is a transfer of enthusiasm. And I'm not going to tell you how to make money here. This is the process of what I'm showing you really is all about composition. But it's one of those things. Don't feel that you can't be selfish in your work and shoot pictures that just excite you, because I think that's really important to be able to have that enthusiasm. So here, this lovely little cut in here, which we talked about earlier, and closing of the triangles here is quite important to this. This is a picture for the corset maker, Lisa Keating. And I lit this with the same light that's lighting me now. It's an 800 Lupolux spotlight. And I just put that in the woods. I plug it into an inverter. I've got little power inverters. They last a couple of hours. Brilliant. And then I've got a Lupolux quad light from the front. So the quad light is the soft light. And I've got the hard light from the back here and that beautiful rim light. Fantastic. And it's not about her. It's not a portrait of her. It's about the corset. The corset is the star. You've got to make sure you understand what the subject of your picture is. What makes a fashion picture different from a portrait? So this is a fashion picture. This is for a bridal collection. And for me, what's important, of course, with the diagonals, the closed triangles, the shapes, of course, are important. But I've lit this again with that same light. I've got the Lupolux on the front. I've put a little frost, no, I haven't frosted gel. I've put an orange gel on it. So it's got a half orange, which takes that down to about 4,200 Kelvin. So I'm getting that a little bit of warmth. And this is in January in London last year. And outside I've put an Elanchron Quadra into a 70 centimetre Rotolux softbox, but without the front on it. So it's working in what we call beauty dish mode. It's got a little metal diffuser cap. And that's given me the shadows of sunlight on the wall there. So I've got a flash outside the building in the rain, and we've got tungsten sort of balanced light. There's daylight balanced light, but with an orange gel here. And there's also another one without an orange gel, just providing that rim light there. So out from the left. And I'm on my knees, but I want her to look happy. You know, I don't want her to look miserable, because obviously we're trying to sell or promote the dresses. This is another fashion shot. You can see there's again, closed triangles, there's a diagonal. I've kept her eyes straight, but I put the diagonal into the body. This curve here, this side here is perfect. This is exactly what we're looking for. Doesn't matter what happens down there. It could be lumpy and bumpy down there, it doesn't matter. Your eye goes to here. And I've just got down there, clipped the dress up at the back, so she can't walk. But that's irrelevant in fashion, isn't it, of course? But can you see we've got eye contact, and a very strong eye contact, but it's blank. It's like there's no one there. She's looking through the camera. That's another thing. For fashion, if you can do that, if you can get just someone just to stare into mid-distance rather than at you, then what happens is people who are reading the magazine, they don't realise this, but their eyes go straight to the clothes and not to the person. You don't see the soul of the person. You're not looking at it as a portrait. So the difference between a good fashion shot and a good portrait is subtle. It's that subtlety and that connection. Talk a little bit more about that on Sunday morning. Start at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning. And I'm talking about that connection and how to achieve it and how to create moments to capture. And how to get... See, this here, this is a lovely energy, happy. But is it real? You know, is there act? Is it... Probably it's not quite there. Do you know what I mean? And I think you can see there's an element of action in there. But I love this triangles here. And I thought the dress looked great. But this is about lighting and composition. So let's do that. So what have we got here? We've got a nice strong diagonal running up through, starting at the bottom corner. Corners are good places to start with your leading lines. And we've got this window here. And you think that's where the light's coming from, giving this lovely rim light? Well, it's not. It's coming from behind his pillar. On that windowsill, next to that potted plant, is a speed light. And that speed light's on full power. And it's walloping the back of this girl. And it's also hitting here. You can see her shadow on here now. But it's hitting there, and that's speed light there. And then this is my bright horizons bit, isn't it? The furthest point in the scene being the brightest. Of course, this dress picks up a little bit on that. But it gives it depth by keeping that little window in there as well. Okay. And then I do quite a lot of Hollywood type lighting. I call it Hollywood lighting, but I mean, is there such a thing? I mean, is it easy to define it as a genre? Probably not, but it's lit using hard lights. These are this shadow here, very hard shadows. And sometimes the motivation for the light source is the practical lights, we call them, actually in the picture itself. Okay, so we have these other lights on in the room and things, and we get this wonderful feel and depth to it, and then there's the mirror. And what's important here is to get the curls in the hair, to get the styling right. Hair is everything for sort of, especially if you do vintage type work. You know, lovely sequin dresses and design. I've shot from above, but because I just felt there was a vantage point here that just worked for me. And then I got her to turn around, and I came around and shoot a different angle, and I shot him from the back because I like the back of the dress. I thought that was lovely. But I don't want to put any light onto it. I want it just to lurk in the shadows, but for it to be there. And then the key light is down her nose, so it's pointing, when I say down her nose, it's like here, if I'm looking at the light there, the light is straight down my nose, okay? But you can see that what this does is it highlights the cheekbones and the jawline, and these two parallel lines are beautiful. You know, makeup artists will go to great lengths to create shadows under the cheekbones and things like that. We can do that with light. Okay, it's important that how you use light complements the makeup and the styling that goes with the picture. Okay, so again, closed triangles. Another thing I'll mention is that when I bring arms to the body, I try to create it asymmetric. Yeah, put a little bit of shape into the shoulders and bring one arm slightly higher than the other. It just changes the balance of a picture. Again, this is a speed light, but I've lit this from outside the building. So I put a speed light in the garden, and there was an old manor house, and the windows were streaming with condensation. And that condensation was perfect because it created this pattern on the back wall as the light came through. I love breaking my light up, but look at this curve here. That's beautiful. That one there. It's just the way, these are the things that excite me, the shapes that we find within people. And they come from the most extraordinary places sometimes, and everybody's different. They'll be going into this little boudoir sequence here. This is quite a simple picture, but it's lit. This is an overcast day, and I'm in Belgium, near Ostend here. And I've got a light coming from behind, this type of light, okay? But it's from behind. It's an LED version, a spotlight. And it's just shining through on the back. And of course, it's burnt out here. But it gives that feeling of sunlight. Yeah? And I've gone into the back of the room, switched this light on. We're about 800 ISO, 60th at f4. So I can tell that exposure because that's the same. That's the exposure that little practical lights with a sort of equivalent of a 20-watt bulb would give you to make it look quite reasonable. And it's just all about the connection here. There's a little bit of a bedhead and the rose, the Old English rose. Just, I don't know, add something to the picture. That's a bit striking, isn't it? This isn't my type of genre, really, but I thought it was quite exciting. I had a one-to-one client when I say a one-to-one client, the people come to me for a day of shoot training, etc. It was on an art project and developed working with cats and women in the feline form. We did this shoot. It was a Catwoman shoot, but I included this in the set simply because I wanted, first of all, to discuss the viewpoint, shooting from below and changing those viewpoints and how dramatic it makes pictures, but also the fact that the lighting for this picture is in the next room. So I put the Elanchron Quadra into the kitchen, which is through this door, and I had it just blasting into the hallway through the door. And it was creating this lovely light here. I was quite a long way back into the room, because if you've got the light just the other side of that there, then this arm and this side of the face would be way too bright. It would be a lot brighter than this door here, which is acting as a reflector onto the front of this cat suit. So you move the light further back into the room. I might have put it back maybe 4 meters into that kitchen. So by the time it hit here and the time it hit there, the difference in light level there and there wasn't that great. It's all to do with ratios. But lighting through from another room, fantastic. And again, it's all about this amazing sort of the way the corset's pulled in there. And sometimes when you're working with someone, again, it's that curve at the back. That for me is everything. And this closing of the hands and being tall. And obviously she's got that elegance and posture, which is just beautiful. I popped a bit of smoke into the room to add a bit of drama, but she's on a table. And when you put someone up on a table, it feels like a performance before you've started. It's really, I'll show you, you'll see a few other pictures. And I picked this idea up from Helmut Newton. I saw one of Helmut Newton's pictures. It's not a very well published or very well known picture, where he had a girl on a table. And I thought, do you know what? It's the fact that she's on the table makes the picture, because it takes it out of context. It's like swinging from chandeliers. And things like that. So I thought, I'll have a bit of that. So I've done the same. And you'll see that in a few pictures' time. Here, this picture here, again, it's back into sort of composition, really. I've placed my subject sort of fairly central in the frame. The colour palettes that we're working with are very muted and very similar. So I'm keeping everything into the same gamut of colour. But it's full of strong verticals. And she's in a cupboard, in a lovely kitchen space, in a kitchen area, in this old manor house. But I just put her into the cupboard because I felt that way we can rest the upper body against the wall. We can get the eyes on the diagonal. We can close her eyes just to make her draw us into the picture, to imagine what she's thinking. And we've got those beautiful colours and everything going well together, and the verticals. It's a very simple picture for me.